Hello and welcome. This week, we're talking about breaking free from exploitation, how the world around us quietly shapes our behavior, and how we can begin to protect our peace by seeing it clearly. When people begin to make peace with cravings, something interesting starts to happen. The focus slowly shifts from what's wrong with me to what's happening around me. At first, it's about understanding the patterns, seeing that cravings aren't random or mysterious. They follow a rhythm in the brain that can be predicted, soothed, and changed. That realization is powerful. It removes the shame and brings in a sense of calm control. Then there's the discovery that forcing change too quickly doesn't work. The brain sees abrupt restriction as danger and pushes back with panic. Real progress comes from slowing down, building stability, and letting safety take root first. And over time, another truth becomes visible. This struggle doesn't exist in isolation. It's everywhere in families, workplaces, social gatherings, even in the language that we use with one another. The problem isn't personal, it's cultural. Seeing that bigger picture deepens compassion and makes judgment fade away. All of that awareness leads to this next step, realizing that much of the pressure we feel isn't accidental, it's engineered. And when we understand how exploitation works, we can begin to protect ourselves from it. That's where we're headed today, learning how to recognize manipulation for what it is and creating the kind of safety that makes peace possible again. When we use the word exploitation, we're describing something very specific: the deliberate use of human vulnerability for profit. It's when emotion becomes a business model, when comfort, excitement, belonging, or relief are studied, packaged, and sold back to us in ways that keep the brain hooked. The people who design these systems aren't guessing. They rely on research teams filled with neuroscientists, psychologists, and data analysts who spend years learning how to influence behavior. Every color, every sound, and every word is tested. Every image is measured for how quickly it catches attention, how deeply it stirs emotion, and how long it stays in memory. It's not an accident that so many people feel pulled in the same ways. It's engineering. Exploitation works by convincing the brain that the promise of relief or reward lies just outside of us, that comfort is something to be bought, not built. The pull becomes emotional long before it becomes logical. And because these messages are everywhere, the mind stops noticing them as influence. They start to feel like our own thoughts. I deserve this. I've earned a little comfort. Everyone else seems fine. Maybe I'm overreacting. Those phrases aren't failures of character. They're the echoes of conditioning. The power of exploitation is that it hides in plain sight. It doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like normal life. Seeing that clearly can stir anger at first, but underneath the anger is something much more useful: clarity. Clarity restores choice. Once we can say, "This isn't me, this is design," the spell breaks. The cues lose part of their power because they've been named. That's why this kind of awareness matters so much. You can't avoid every form of influence, but you can stop letting it slip in unnoticed. Once you see the pattern, you can choose differently, not from willpower, but from understanding. Now that we know what exploitation actually looks like, let's take a closer look at the brain itself. What's happening beneath the surface when influence takes hold? Once we understand what exploitation is, it becomes easier to see how it takes hold in the brain. The human brain is built to learn from patterns. It constantly scans the environment for signals that predict reward or comfort. When one appears, the brain releases a small amount of dopamine, not a flood of pleasure, but a quiet message that says, pay attention, something good might be coming. That signal is all an advertiser needs. Once the brain learns that a certain color, image, or sound predicts comfort or reward, that cue becomes powerful. Every time we encounter it, the same small surge of anticipation fires. This anticipation doesn't just live in thought, it lives in the body. The heart rate quickens slightly, the breath changes, and the brain's focus narrows. In that moment, we're not reasoning, we're reacting. Inside the brain, several systems are working together. The amygdala tags the cue as emotionally important. The nucleus accumbens releases dopamine in expectation of reward. The prefrontal cortex, which helps us think ahead and weigh consequences, quiets down for a few seconds. That tiny pause in logic is where exploitation lives. It's the gap between wanting and deciding. When these cues are repeated hundreds or even thousands of times, the circuits grow stronger. The brain learns not only to expect reward, but to need the cue in order to feel calm. It becomes a conditioned response, one that triggers automatically, even without conscious awareness. This isn't evidence of weakness. It's evidence of how well the brain learns. Conditioning is how we remember language, how we navigate cities, how we survive. Exploitation simply hijacks that same learning system and reroutes it toward profit. What makes this so effective is the consistency of exposure. The more often we see a cue, the safer it feels. The safer it feels, the less we question it. And the less we question it, the more automatic the response becomes. But there's good news here. The very brain that can be conditioned can also be retrained. Every time you see a cue and recognize it for what it is, this is designed to make me react. You bring your prefrontal cortex back online. You reintroduce choice. That single moment of awareness interrupts the automatic loop. And when that happens repeatedly, the brain begins to rewire toward freedom. This is why knowledge matters. You don't have to fight every cue or cut yourself off from the world. You simply need to see it clearly, calmly, without judgment. Seeing breaks the spell. From here, we can start to explore how to use that awareness to build real safety, the kind that doesn't depend on control or avoidance, but on stability and trust in yourself. Once we can see exploitation clearly, the next step is to build protection around ourselves. Not protection through fear or control, but through safety, the kind that lets the brain rest. When the brain feels safe, it doesn't have to chase comfort. It already has it. Safety begins with awareness. When you can walk through your day and quietly name what's happening, this environment is pulling at me, or this space feels calm, you start to understand which surroundings activate old circuits and which ones support healing. That knowledge becomes your roadmap. Creating safety does not mean cutting yourself off from the world. It means shaping your world so it supports you. It's the difference between swimming against the current and learning where the still water is. You might start by noticing the spaces where you spend the most time: your home, your car, your workspace. Ask yourself, do these places make my nervous system relax, or do they keep it alert? If they feel tense or cluttered with cues, small adjustments can make a big difference. Simplicity helps the brain exhale. Predictability lowers anxiety. Even the absence of certain triggers, visual, auditory, or emotional, creates room for calm. Safety is also social. Who you spend time with shapes your regulation. Some people soothe the nervous system, while others activate it. It isn't about blame, it's about biology. When someone is relaxed and supportive, your own mirror neurons pick that up. When someone is chaotic or critical, your body responds in kind. Choosing steady company isn't selfish, it's protective. You can think of each safe space you create as a small anchor. The more anchors you have, the easier it becomes to stay steady when stress hits. And over time, those anchors connect, and stability stops being something you chase. It becomes your baseline. Inside, different parts of you respond to this shift. The part that used to brace for chaos begins to stand down. The part that sought relief starts to trust that comfort is possible without outside manipulation. The inner system learns that calm doesn't mean danger, it means freedom. Building safety isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. Every time you reduce exposure to cues, you send the brain the message, you're not in danger anymore. And the brain listens. Cortisol drops, dopamine stabilizes, thinking becomes clearer. And over time, the focus moves from avoiding harm to designing peace. You're not only protecting recovery, you're creating an environment where recovery can thrive. Next, we'll talk about what this looks like in practice, how to carry safety with you, even in environments that aren't yet safe. Safety doesn't end at the front door. There will always be places that stir old patterns: busy stores, social events, even certain conversations. The goal isn't to avoid life, it's to walk into it prepared. Preparation starts long before you arrive. The brain calms when it knows what to expect. A quick mental check in: where am I going and what's usually happening there? Tells your system this is a planned experience, not a threat. That short pause engages the prefrontal cortex and lowers stress hormones before the first cue ever appears. Attention is your greatest tool. Exploitation depends on distraction. Protection depends on focus. Decide, even briefly, what you want to give your attention to. Maybe it's the people you're with, the purpose of the errand you're on, or a simple intention like staying steady and observant. The more specific the focus, the less room there is for manipulation to slip in. If you feel the pull start to rise, don't fight it. Fighting tells the body there's danger. Instead, observe it. Label it for what it is, conditioning, and take a slow breath. That single breath resets the nervous system and reminds your brain that you are safe and aware. Sometimes, despite preparation, the environment will still feel loud or fast. That's when small grounding gestures help. A hand on your chest, gentle breathing, a few words of reassurance. You're not resisting the world. You're reminding your body that it doesn't have to join the chaos. Each time you enter a challenging setting and stay calm, the brain learns. Circuits that once signaled threat begin to associate those situations with steadiness instead. And over time, what once felt difficult becomes neutral. And what was neutral begins to feel peaceful. This is how safety expands, one environment at a time, one calm return at a time. You start by creating safety at home, and eventually you carry that safety with you wherever you go. Next, we'll look at how to maintain that protection long term so that safety isn't just something you build, it's something you live. Real protection isn't about hiding from the world. It's about changing how you move through it. When safety has been practiced long enough, it becomes instinctive. The brain learns that peace isn't something rare or fragile. It's normal. You wake up with a different kind of energy. There's less scanning for danger and more quiet confidence that you can handle what comes. Long-term protection starts with repetition. Every time you recognize a manipulative cue and respond with awareness instead of urgency, the brain records it as new learning. Neural pathways that once fired automatically begin to weaken. Circuits for reflection and self-trust strengthen in their place. Eventually, those new pathways feel familiar. Calm becomes home base. The moments of influence are still out there, but they don't land the same way. You might notice the marketing, the imagery, the emotional triggers, but they pass through without catching. That's what freedom looks like inside the nervous system. As these changes settle in, your parts adjust too. The one that used to brace for the next wave begins to rest. The one that chased quick comfort starts to realize it doesn't have to. Each part learns that steadiness isn't boredom, it's safety. You'll also notice your boundaries becoming clearer. You spend time with people and in places that support your peace. You limit exposure to what drains it. The world doesn't have to shrink. It just becomes more intentional. And in time, something else happens. The same awareness that once protected you begins to guide you. You start designing life around what keeps you well. The habits that used to feel like effort start to feel like care. Recovery shifts from being the work you do to being the way you live. There's no finish line to cross. There's only a growing sense of steadiness, less urgency, more choice, more room to breathe. That's long-term protection. It's the quiet confidence that exploitation can't easily reach you anymore because you see it for what it is. Before we close, let's take a moment to notice how different this understanding feels compared to when you first began. The blame is lighter. The chaos, it's quieter. And underneath it all, there's a growing trust in yourself. That trust is the real freedom. It's what allows you to keep building a life that supports healing, that supports connection, that supports peace. One safe space, one calm breath, one clear choice at a time. Awareness always begins with a small moment of truth. That instant when you finally see what's been shaping your thoughts and choices. And from that point on, everything changes. What once felt like self-blame becomes understanding. What once felt like chaos starts to quiet. And what once felt impossible begins to make sense. When you can recognize exploitation for what it is, a system built to keep people reactive, you stop taking it personally. You begin to see the intelligence of your own brain and the compassion behind its efforts to protect you. That shift is what turns awareness into peace. Safety is the ground that peace grows from. It isn't fragile or limited. It expands every time you notice a cue. Take a breath and remember that you have a choice. Each time you stay steady, those new neural pathways strengthen. And with practice, the steadiness starts to spread into your home, your relationships, your community, and eventually into the way you see the whole world. Freedom isn't dramatic, it's quiet. It's the space between the old impulse and the new awareness. The moment you realize you don't have to react, you can simply be. If you've been walking this path for a while, notice the difference. The world hasn't changed, but you have. Your awareness has become protection. Your protection has become peace. And peace, practiced over time, becomes a lifestyle. Thank you for listening.